Now, what you might hear sounds like a sad story, but for me, it's been a symbol of hope. It's been the reason why I pushed myself, why I've gotten as far as I have, why I haven't gotten as far as I want to, and the key factor on why I actually make music. If you don't know me, my name is Sky. I go by Skylar Cruz on the internet. I make music, I rap, produce, and songwrite, I guess. And I just want to introduce myself real quick and give you the story of my life and what's led me to the path that I've taken. I just want to be myself and I want to be transparent because I don't think you get a lot of that nowadays. When I say I didn't have a lot growing up, I really mean it. And when I say that I have a lot more now than I did as a child, I also mean that. And I'm very fortunate for what I have nowadays. But growing up, my mother was an addict. I didn't get the opportunities that most kids have with their parents. And I spent a lot of my life wondering where my mother was, wondering why she wasn't around, wondering why I was put in the situations I was. And I didn't realize until a lot later in my life, I'm 21 now, I didn't realize that, my mother was a person with her own past, with her own trauma, with her own demons. And I spent a good majority of my life in abusive households where my mother would not leave her significant other. And I had to witness my mother being beat every single day after coming home from school. I mean, there was cops at my house. I watched my mother and her significant other be arrested, and this was normal for my life. Violence was normal in my life, and I had no way to escape that. And I think I tried a lot of activities that most kids would get into, like sports, or I would skateboard a lot with my friends, but that never took away or brought me different feelings the way that music did. It didn't give me the escape that I was always looking for. And I think what happened was around 12 and 13 years old, I wanted to make music, and I just bought a mic. And at the time, I used to box, and I was like, I'm going to quit boxing and make music. And from there on out, 8 years ago, when I was 13, I bought a microphone and I had shoe boxes stacked on top of each other so the microphone could reach my face. And I would just rap, and it was terrible. It sucked. It wasn't any good, but it gave me the escape I finally found. I used to play fucking flag football and basketball, and I used to be a straight A student, but after everything that my mom put me through, I changed, and there was things in my head, in my life, that I couldn't really deal with or cope with being as young as I was. So I ran, and I found escape through music. I found escape through writing lyrics. Even though they were bad lyrics and I didn't know what I was doing, I did it. I loved it and I enjoyed it, and I still do it today. Even though I'm not as far as I wanted to be or expected to be at the time I started, I thought I would be famous by 21, or I thought I'd be touring the world at 19 years old. And I think what happens is we set the expectations for ourselves and we let ourselves down. And that puts us into a headspace that I don't think we really expected we could be in. And as I went through the developmental stages of my life, things started to change. I became more aggressive. I started acting out more. I stopped showing up to school and class, and I started doing a lot more drugs. And I followed in my mom's footsteps for a very long time, not realizing the consequences that they would have in my life in the future, not realizing the relationships I had with my family that were being ruined because I wanted to be like my mom. Not realizing that my mom wasn't setting the right role model, the right path for me to follow. I was just supposed to be this great kid who went through all these terrible things in my life that was supposed to just make it out and be the best in the family or whatever. That wasn't the case, and I don't think that's the case for anybody. You can't go through the things that I went through without realizing that they're affecting you mentally, deep down inside of you spiritually. You don't realize those things affect you. When you see them, when they're happening, and as they pass, you don't realize that certain situations trigger you in a way where you didn't realize you could be triggered. And I saw that happening in my life in front of my eyes. I didn't realize that, taking these pills at 13 years old, 12 and 13 years old, taking pills, trying to fucking cope with the pain of watching my mother get beat every day, watching, my family just push my mother out for her drug addiction, which is acceptable. It's when someone in your life has a bad habit or pattern, it's totally okay to push them and keep your space from them. That's fine. You can do that. But I didn't realize how it was affecting me. And I felt outcasted. I felt invisible from everybody, from the world. Nobody cares. And that's a big lesson to learn at a young age is the fact that nobody cares, not even your family. And at the time, you can't see the efforts that others put in for you because it might be behind the scenes, or like I said, I started doing a lot of bad things that I think people didn't want to be involved with me because they saw me turning into my mom and they didn't want to be involved with my mom. So then they started keeping their space, and you don't realize that them keeping their space is still a form of caring for you. But at some point, they need to care for themselves a lot more for you too as well. So, a lot of things happened at such an early, between the time I was born and 10 years old. I think I experienced too much life that I didn't need to. All of a sudden, I don't know what my life is supposed to be like or how being an adult is like, because now I grew up with all these examples of what not to be like, that I had to learn how to be a responsible adult by myself. I had to learn to follow your dreams and follow your passions and be in a relationship and be a good person, and how to be responsible at your job and maintain your income and budget your money by myself. And I had a lot of great help along the way. And I want to say there's a person in my life, my significant other, my girlfriend, who's been such a great importance in my life to get to a position where I'm in today, that I'll never thank her. She deserves everything that I hope I can bring her in the future. That's for another time though. When so it got to a point where I saw my mom lose herself, and I'll say this, my mom was on lithium for mental disorders and bipolar, and she wasn't okay. And my mom stopped taking her lithium and she lost her mind. She would send me outside and say that the cops are looking for her. There's helicopters looking for her, and they're knocking at the door. And I would open the door and I would answer the door, and there was no one there. She would tell me that her wife was cheating on her, and she had proof, and she would show me her phone, and there would be nothing there. There would be a bunch of numbers that meant nothing. She thought she was digging into things that weren't there. And by the time it came to the end of my mom's life, she wasn't there. I mean, my first year of high school, my freshman year of high school, I spent living out of hotels because my mom wasn't paying rent. I had nowhere to go. My family didn't want anything to do with me because I was an asshole. And I was living out of hotels, which I didn't know how she afforded, and I was ditching class to go buy pills and smoke weed and drink alcohol my freshman year, 14 years old, 13 years old, and I just thought that was what life was like. I thought that's what you did. Because that's all I've seen in my life. And it led up to watching my mom completely lose herself. And I said, man, I need to get away from this. And I had to leave my mom. And I had to figure out where I was sleeping. I was sleeping on this person. I was sleeping on the floor, and there was cockroaches, and it was fucking nasty, man. My freshman year, I had nowhere to go. And leading up to those last months of my mom's life were really, really bad time of my life. I just thought I didn't know anything else. And I thought that's how life was. And of September of 2018, I think. And it gets hard because time moves by so fast that you forget when these things happen. September of 2018, my mom committed suicide. And it's a hard thing sometimes, but I don't want to dwell over it because, although I love my mom, she also put me through a lot of things that I didn't need to go through, especially as a kid, as a child that didn't know the things I knew. All I knew was that I wanted to make music, and I wanted to just make sure that people didn't feel how I felt, and that if they did feel the way I felt, that they weren't alone, because I didn't feel okay. I was 13 years old when my mom committed suicide around my 14. I was 14 years old, and I was taking 8 to 10 Xanax a day. And I would steal money from my family, from my mom. I don't know how she got the money, but I'd steal this money to just support my own drug addiction. I wasn't okay, and when my mom committed suicide, I lost myself for a long time. A very long time. And I think there's so much in my life that happened that I can't fit it all in one video, but I'm going to try because this is my introduction to the world. And I want to be transparent because I'm not like everybody else. I don't want to be mysterious. I don't want to be, I'm not some fashion model. I'm me. I'm myself. And this is who I am. And when I went through that, I just started tearing myself apart. Because a lot of times she blames me for wanting to die. She blamed me for her drug addiction. She blamed me for a lot of things that happened in her life, and I didn't understand why, but she did. And I put the responsibility on myself that it was my fault. Later, I taught myself how to unlearn those patterns in my thinking, because they're not healthy, they're not okay, and they're not productive. But for a long time, it really ate at me. And being in high school, like you see everything in my life dropped. I didn't care about grades. I didn't care about school. I just wanted to get high and make music. That's all I did. Now at that point, I'm very grateful for my family to have welcomed me back into their house, because once my mom passed away, they realized I really had nowhere or no one to go to. And that was a time where, it was hard for my family, because not only was I just caught up in these patterns and this drug addiction, but it was hard for me too, because I felt so negatively towards my family for what they've done, for not helping me, for not taking me away from some situations that I wish they did. But I can't blame them for what they did, and I still love them to this day because I think that they made the right decisions. I'm very happy for every little event that's happened in my life to lead me to who I am and where I am today, because I believe to be a great person, I believe to not be the same. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke weed. I don't even drink at 21. But the point is that, you know, I didn't know how to live my life. I started making terrible decisions. I started getting tattoos from people who were doing them in their garage. And I started smoking more weed than I ever have. And thankful to not be on pills as heavily as I was kind of stepping away because they took away from the process of making music that I didn't like doing them because I liked making music more. But I was smoking so much weed. There's times where there's months and months of things that I don't remember. I was in a long-term relationship in high school that I was a terrible partner in. And, you know, at 14, my mom committed suicide. And I did so many bad things leading up to 16 years old. Right around COVID, 2020, I was 16, COVID hit, school was out, and I was just still taking the pills. And I can't tell you everything that I did within those 2 years because it gets so hazy because of the pills, the drugs, the ditching school. It's just, all I know, I'll tell you this. It was just, every day was the same. I go to school, go to a class, and then leave class, walk home from school, an hour walk maybe, and make music, and then do it all over again. Just make music, get high, and barely go to school. That was my life from 14 to 16. That's all I wanted. That's all I knew how to do. When 16 hit, I just did the wrong things, and I ended up trying to hop on this train that was still moving. And my leg just got caught right under the train, and I had to have my leg amputated. And, you know, before I was found by anybody, I was out there for hours. I remember pulling my leg out from under this train and yelling for people to come and find me. And I remember watching the sunset thinking this was my life. When the sun set, I remember thinking that I was never going to be found, and that's it. And by the grace of God, people don't know how much I put my faith into the higher power above me, because by the grace of God, I was found just in time. And I was taken to a hospital. I was flown in by a hospital, fight or flight, I think it's what they call it. And I remember I remember someone walking up to me with a flashlight and then waking up in the hospital the next day and my leg was gone. And that was a terrific experience. I mean, it was terrible. I still remember the pain, the feeling of getting ran over by the train, the words I said when it happened, the screaming at the top of my voice. I remember I don't like yelling because it brings me back to that moment that I so desperately hate that I wish I could erase sometimes. I remember that moment vividly. And when I see people fight, when I see things, when I go too fast in my car, when I feel scared, those moments pop up in my head. That moment of being ran over by the train still pops up in my head today. And it makes the best way I can feel is, or the best way I can explain it is that it feels like I'm in that moment. It feels like I'm reliving that moment. And it looks like I'm present, but in my head, in my eyes, I see the moment reliving again. I don't feel sorry for myself. I don't wish to change things about my life. Some days are harder than others. I will admit that. Some days, man, I wish that I could have two legs again, but I'll never admit defeat in my life, because that was a moment that made me who I am and the person that I could that I could say I love today. The only thing that's kept me alive in my life is making music. Whether it's just writing lyrics, writing music, writing songs, that they don't even need to be about my life. They don't even need to be about the experiences. Just songs to keep me distracted, to keep me focused, to keep my priorities in check. The music is what's brought me whole again. And I don't think I'll ever stop making music. Whether I do make money, whether it does become my career, whether I have fans, or whether I become the person I expected to become 8 years ago when I started, music is my life and it's what keeps me whole. And I just want to share it with the world and have it mean something for somebody else. It was needed to have the things I went through so I can build a person that I love today. I don't want to keep this video too long, and I know this sounds like a terrible story for some people, and maybe I get to explain it more in depth at some point in my life, and I really get to make the change, and I will make the change for other people's lives, because I won't stop until my dreams really come true in the way that I want them to. Even if it takes 10 years, 15 years, I feel like my story is something that could change people's lives. My music as well, and I'm working on it every single day, but this is who I am. My name is Sky. You might know me as Skylar Cruz, but this is who I am. So that's all I have to say. Peace.